This is Art 315, Group 2, on the chapter about sexuality and reproduction. Our group members are Katie Remy, who will be talking about ancient Greek society and their sexual fluidity in their artwork, Sophia Prado, who will be talking about the sexual repression of European women in art, Raymond Carrillo, who will be talking about Rome's perspective towards sexuality, Karen Segovia, who will be talking about Egypt's perspective towards fertility and how it affected their art, and Jocelyn Gaiano, who will be talking about India's approach towards fertility deities.
My name is Katie Remy, and I'm going to be talking about how sexual fluidity in males was a huge aspect of life in the ancient Greek society, and how it helped shape their identity by showing how the Greeks idolized the male figure, as well as young men in general, and how this can be seen reflected in many of the artworks of that time period. The two photos I have selected to analyze are Attic red figure Kylix and grave Naskos of a standing youth and a nude boy. In Attic red figure Kylix, it is a terracotta cup done by the carpenter painter in 500 BC, which is currently on display at the J. Paul Getty Museum. A kylix is an ancient Greek cup with a shallow bowl and a tall stem, and was primarily used for drinking wine. The image on the inside of the cup is a youthful-looking boy sitting down, drawing in the affections of an older man with a beard in his hands. He is coddling his face in a loving way, which suggests a romantic relationship between the two. Both men are half naked, and the older man's penis is slightly showing. On the outside of the cup, going all along the sides, are images of naked men engaging in athletic activity such as the javelin, discus, and long jump. The fact that all these men are naked and their genitals are exposed shows the lustfulness and appreciation for the naked male body. Many of the men in the images are looking directly at the penis of another man next to him. It is an erotic image that combines the appreciation for sports and men in one place. The glorification of a strong man is shown and idolized in this piece of art, and it reflects how the people of this time also felt. They wanted to document the things most important to them, and at the time, it was lusting over these beautiful men/boys. In my next photo, grave Naskos of a standing youth and a nude boy, it is a marble sculpture by an unknown artist dated back to 360 BC, which is also currently on display at the J. Paul Getty Museum. This sculpture depicts a very young boy, naked, holding his hands over his genitals, who is looking up at an older man, and it deals more with the subject of pederasty and the sexual fluidity among older men and younger boys, which was a cultural norm in ancient Greece. It wasn't considered taboo like it is today. Older men would take young boys under their wing and navigate them through life, but there was a sexual component that can't be ignored. The idea of old men with young boys, or this infatuation with a strong, young, beautiful adult male, was completely normal and socially accepted, if not praised. The male figure was held in such high esteem that it wasn't unusual for men to lust over other men. The male body was viewed as perfect, and they held pride in having a toned, muscular build. Romantic and sexual feelings from another male to another were seen as very normal. The gods were also known to take part in homosexual activities, and this helped set a standard for the Greek people of what would be acceptable in their society. These art pieces give us some insight into what life might have been like in this time period, especially in showing how sexual fluidity in males was a huge aspect of life in the ancient Greek society, and how it helped shape their identity. Art is helpful, if not essential, in understanding the ways of our past.
My name is Sophia Prado, and I'm here to talk about how European art has historically used sexual imagery as a way to subjugate women and people of color. There are two main ways women are subjugated in artwork in Europe. First, by portraying women's sexuality as part of mythological or religious stories, and second, by portraying sexual women as prostitutes and demonizing them. In the painting Cupid Wounding Psyche by François Boucher, we can see an example of how traditional European art presents the sexuality of women in a religious way. We see Psyche in the moment of the myth where Cupid chooses to wound her with his arrow rather than kill her. The arrow is symbolic in the painting for sexual penetration, Cupid's attraction to Psyche, and their eventual marriage. But the composition of this painting tells a different story. Psyche looks away from Cupid despite how he stares at her. Instead, her body is twisted away from him towards the viewer. The pose gives the viewer of the painting a chance to see more of Psyche's nude body. It serves another purpose as well, though. It conveys Psyche as more chaste. By looking away, she cannot be implied that she desires this sexual attention. This is also why she does not look at the viewer. To engage anyone while nude would imply she has control over her own sexual power, and by extension that she is lustful and sinful. Furthermore, in the painting The Three Races by Emile Bernard, we see how women who do choose to engage their sexual power are displayed in artwork. The three nude women in this portrait make direct eye contact with the viewer. They engage the viewer, implying that they know they're nude. The painting is commonly understood as a brothel, which was a popular subject of European artists who painted abroad. The composition shows decadent surroundings, but the paint and brushstroke are rough and smudgy. This implies their sinful nature. Additionally, it was quite common during the time to display a white woman alongside a black woman in order to imply that she was a prostitute. This often stems from the racist idea at the time, which portrayed many people of color as closer to nature and more animalistic than Europeans. Paintings like this one were part of a trend called Orientalism, which artists from Europe would go abroad to paint people of other countries, often emphasizing these stereotypes in their artwork.
Hello everyone, my name is Raymond Carrillo, and I will be talking about Rome's passion for sexuality. Sexuality in ancient Rome was not just a public necessity, it was something the Romans were passionate about. And some of the artworks they have left behind makes this evident. Two of them in particular will be given emphasis to. The first art piece that I will talk about and or relate to is a double-sided Roman silver cup named the Warren Cup. Roman men were raised to like both sexes and not necessarily just one. The two men that are wearing the laurel wreath, they are the masters. They're wearing a laurel wreath, which stands for victory, I believe. They are the masters. It's also obvious that they're the masters because they look older and they're pretty muscular. The other two that are engaging in this sexual activity, they are the slaves, and they are soft and not muscular. It was common for masters to sleep with their slaves, regardless if they were men, women, and also regardless of their age. The slaves on this cup were underage. However, they were of marrying age. The setting in the room and the items within it suggest a Hellenized setting that's obviously inspired by the Greeks. The Warren Cup had many uses, but it was definitely used in feasts. The Warren Cup would be passed around, like, let's say, I don't know, on a big table. It would be passed around to all the guests, and guests would be able to eat from it, drink from it, and of course get aroused by it and entertained. The Warren Cup used to have two handles that depicted two pairs of male lovers. Roman men who were married or not married could pretty much go and sleep with any woman they want, as long as the woman wasn't married to a Roman citizen. The next art piece that I will talk about is a fresco from Pompeii. It was inside the most popular brothel called Lupanare. Yeah, erotic frescoes like this one could be found in other brothels in Pompeii. Imagine that you were in Pompeii in those days and you went inside a brothel. you would probably see a lot of erotic frescoes showing a variety of creative sexual positions. Erotic frescoes like this one served many purposes. For example, it was common and it was a tradition for Roman men to take a young man that has never had sex before and take him to a brothel. So, for a person like that, these erotic frescoes could definitely be visual instructions. These erotic frescoes also served as a menu. It let people know what kind of services are being offered. Not just that, these frescoes would be on top of room doors or around that vicinity to essentially let people know what kind of services are being offered in what rooms. The mattresses in the rooms of the brothels were made of stone. And that is it for my presentation. Thank you.
My name is Karen Segovia, and my research was focused on how Egyptians viewed fertility and how the importance of it affected their artworks. As you can see here, there are two pieces of artwork that depict the way the Egyptians viewed fertility. The piece on the left is titled Erotic Composition, and it's a limestone sculpture made by an unknown artist, dated from 305 to 30 BCE, which is currently displayed in the Brooklyn Museum. The piece on the right is titled Fertility Figurine, which is a glazed ceramic figurine of a woman, made by an unknown artist, dated from 1938 to 1630 BCE, and it is also currently displayed in the Brooklyn Museum. Egyptians have always felt strongly about fertility because, of course, all cultures won't want their race and traditions to fade into nothing. Their myths have revolved around the topic of fertility, and their artworks have been shaped in the same way. This art piece, Erotic Composition, presents a visual of one of the most important myths that the Egyptians have continued to tell. It's the myth of Osiris and Isis. The myth tells the story of Osiris, king of Egypt, Isis, Osiris' wife and sister, and Set, their brother. Set envied his brother Osiris for the power that he had, but also because he wanted to marry Isis. He had always wanted her, but she never reciprocated those feelings, and instead married Osiris. All this resentment got to the point where killing Osiris was the only option Set had in order for him to become king, as he believed was his right from the very beginning. He planned a banquet where he invited all his friends, and had a chest made for the occasion. He invited everyone to climb into the chest, and whoever fit into it was the one who kept it. Of course, Set made the chest so that only Osiris would fit into it, and when Osiris climbed in, he quickly shut it and dumped the chest into the Nile. This is how Isis found him, dead, washed up in Byblos. It is also thought that with magic, or the power of Osiris himself, he was resurrected, and that is how Horus was conceived. Of course, Isis keeps Osiris hidden, so Set won't know that she has found him and is alive once again. But of course, Set finds out and kills him again. But this time, he cuts him up into 14 pieces and spreads them all over Egypt. Isis takes it upon herself to find all the pieces of her husband, but she doesn't find the last piece, which happens to be Osiris's penis. Therefore, they can bring him back to life, but most importantly, rendering him impotent. This myth emphasizes that even after death, fertility can be achieved. If you look at the piece, you could see that the genitals of the male are enlarged, and scholars believe that it was done on purpose to emphasize without words the importance of fertility and sexual potency. This art piece is a fertility figurine, and it was found in a tomb. These figurines were buried with the dead, woman or man, and they were placed in the tomb so that it would give the deceased higher chances of being fertile in the afterlife. It was crucial for the dead to be able to continue procreating even after they passed, and some even buried these figurines with their loved ones so that they could aid them in conception. Many households kept these figurines in their homes so that they could have safe childbirths and also guarantee the continuity of the family. Some were even presented as offerings to the goddess Hathor, who was associated with sexuality, fertility, and childbirth. Both Osiris and Hathor are associated with the underworld. Osiris, after he was killed again, became king of the underworld. He was a beloved king to all his people, so when he passed, they were devastated. But when he became king of the underworld, the people would pass away and they didn't fear death that much, because they knew he was waiting to receive them. Hathor was also seen as a tree goddess, who refreshed the dead on their journey through the underworld. And she was also seen as a divine cow, who was a mediator sort of figure between the worlds of the dead and the living. The Egyptians felt pretty protected, so death wasn't really feared, because they knew they were going to have a safe passage, and be fertile after their long journey. These pieces of art weren't just made to look pretty, but to aid in any way, shape, or form when it came to fertility. Fertility is something that keeps life going. It is what allows us to keep procreating, and it's something that the Egyptians didn't take lightly. They showed the importance that this had in their lives by creating these art pieces. Both erotic composition and fertility figure allowed the audience to see how the value of fertility that the Egyptians thought was the most important influenced and affected the artworks that they created, be it a piece to commemorate a myth they felt told the importance of fertility, or a figure that was placed in tombs or placed as offerings to the goddess Hathor for the chance of conceiving or the chance to have a safe childbirth.
Hello, my name is Yoselin Galliano, and I will be talking about these two sculptures, Kalinga with the face of Shiva and lotus-headed fertility goddess Laja Gauri. First is Linga with the face of Shiva. Out of the many Hindu patrons worshipped by the Indians, one of the more popular ones is called Shiva, and he is known as the creator and destroyer of the universe. This sculpture would have originally served as a central object of worship in most Shiva temples. Now it seems to be in its original form and lacks major tarnish. The sculpture is that of a cylindrical shape with the face of Shiva on one side. Next is lotus-headed fertility goddess Laja Gauri, a Hindu deity who is most commonly known as a motherly figure. This sculpture is of a woman with her legs wide open, showing mostly her breasts, stomach, and vulva. A snake is coiled around her throat, and a lotus flower would have taken the place of her head but was missing during the excavation process. This relief sculpture would also have been seen on a temple wall surrounded by many others. The first similarity that I will discuss is that both sculptures are made from sandstone, a material that was most commonly used based on the heavy quantity of it, since India is surrounded by many mountains. This material was also made for Hindu temples, based on the fact that early carvers found that sculpting in sandstone requires little effort, yet produces finely detailed results. As a result of this, many sculptures are integrated into the temple walls or floor, such as both of these examples discuss. Sandstone is also a material found directly from earth, and Hindu gods are also known to have created earth. So to use such an organic substance would seem that one can make a connection with the divine. Another similarity between these two sculptures is that they are fertility objects. Shiva is also known as a god of varied nature. He has been worshipped for various purposes from ancient times, which is why he is seen in forms as a man with a full body in many relief sculptures, or as a linga form that is specifically for the purpose of fertility worship. On the sculpture, Linga with the face of Shiva, the cylindrical shape very much resembles a phallic symbol. Therefore, this sculpture is related with the act of sex and human reproduction. Like many cultures, the topic of women birthing a male was of high importance to a family in order to ensure the continuation of bloodline. Therefore, it is believed by the scholars that Shiva in linga form has been eulogized for the power of blessing, specifically male babies. The goddess Laja Gauri is also a fertility figure who is specifically known to help women become mothers. On the sculpture, lotus-headed fertility goddess Laja Gauri, her body is on full display with nothing covering her private parts, which emphasize her breasts and stomach. Also, her legs are wide open, showing the vulva in between them, and her squatting resembles a birthing position. Since the top part is broken off, the snake around her neck comes more into view, and is actually a very significant aspect to the topic of fertility. At the time, the worship of the snake as a symbol of fertility is an ancient practice, but not only with sexual reproduction, but also with fertility with the soil of the earth. The snake was a very important animal that many Hindus thought as a protector based on its strength and provider based on the large amount of offspring a female can produce at once. As much as these two sculptures are similar, there is one significant difference, that the Shiva Linga has a head but Lauji Gauri is headless. Shiva's face is fully displayed on one side of the cylinder, with hair neatly piled on top of his head to form a bun. His eyes open and a half smile is formed. All the shapes of the face are symmetrical to exemplify the perfectness the god possesses. Since Shiva is a main god within Hinduism, showing his face is of utmost importance to the followers in order for them to form a connection. While the devotee sees the god, so too the god sees a devotee, and the two can make contact through their eyes. This personal connection between gaze is so important that when the images of the gods are made by the artists, the eyes are the last part to be completed, in order to put more attention and be able to sculpt the best pair of eyes possible. On the other hand, Laja Gauri is headless, so having the experience of gazing into her eyes is not possible. However, originally, she would have a carved sandstone lotus flower from the neck up. The lotus flower is significant to the fertility goddess because, as a substitute for the head, a lotus flower is exhibited on the shoulders, and it indicates the vegetative and fertility aspect of the goddess. Since the lotus flower is absent, the focus is mostly on her body parts rather than her face. Since fertility and childbirth revolves around the woman's nether regions. In conclusion, these two sculptures represent the importance of fertility and childbirth and within the Indian culture, which can result in the act of lovemaking.